प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Today we'll be discussing from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, text 45. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtraigunya Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastho Niryogakshema Atmavan. So now we discussed that how this Vedic literature contains Karma Kanda sections, which is basically different rituals people perform to gain some sense gratificatory results, fruitive results, like a good birth, elevation to heavenly planets, and so on and so forth. So these Karmakanda portions are meant so that people who are not on the higher level of Krishna consciousness or who have not come to the mode of goodness can still be regulated by the Vedas. Because irregular enjoyment is like animal enjoyment. It disrupts the peace and happiness of society, and it's not good for spiritual advancement. So, just like a diseased person has to regulate, similarly, sense enjoyment has to be regulated, and that's what the Vedas contain in the Karmakanda portions. But Krishna already said that is like Pushpitam Vacham. It is like the flowery words, like the poisonous fruit covered by the flowers, nice flowers. So don't fall for those regulations, Krishna already said. So further, he says here, Traigunya Vishaya Veda. O Arjuna, the Vedic literature contains Traigunya Vishaya, topics about the three modes of material nature. Not everything that is mentioned in the Vedas is in the category of liberation. The Vedic literature contains Traigunya Vishaya. It has material meant for those in modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But Krishna's advice is Nishtraigunya Bhava Arjuna. You have to become transcendental to these three modes. Nishtraigunya Bhava. As well as Nirdvandvaha, become freed from these dualities of this material world, like the happiness, distress, heat and cold, honor, dishonor, all these kinds of dualities, they are called Dvandva. Krishna is saying Nirdvandvaha. And he is also saying Nitya Sattvasthaha. Nitya Sattvastha means always remaining in mode of goodness, Sattva Guna. And in the purport, he further clarifies about that. We'll see that. And importantly, Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. Be freed from all kinds of Yoga Kshema. Yoga Kshema means to protect our material welfare, to how to live properly with care and looking for future and planning. That is called Yoga Kshema. So Prabhupada writes it as acquisition and preservation. So he's saying, Krishna is saying, Niryoga Kshema, you have to be freed from those thoughts of acquisition and preservation. How can we achieve that? He says, Atmavan, by being established in the self. So now we will see all of this clearly, what each of these words mean. So the first two lines, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, the first line, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Prabhupada clarifies in the purport that the Vedas deal mainly with the subject matter of the three modes of material nature: Sattva Guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. And anybody who does those activities prescribed in the Vedic literature, they will cause bondage. Any activity you do in these modes, they will have a consequential reaction. The Vedas deal with fruitive activities to elevate the public from sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane, which is Nishtraigunya Bhava. So a person is expected to not get stuck with these three Nishtraigunya, Traigunya Vishaya. A person is expected to become Nishtraigunya Bhava. So that's what Prabhupada says in the purport. Arjuna, as a student and friend of Lord Krishna, is advised to raise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where in the beginning there is Brahma Jignasa, or questions on the supreme transcendence. All the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. For them, the Lord, after creation of the material world, gave the Vedic wisdom advising how to live and get rid of the material entanglement. So, yesterday, I had to fill a form for as a some kind of a requirement for the temple. So, we had to send something to the IRS. So, I filled the form, and they said at the end of the form, you open it in this Acrobat PDF reader, and you will see a button, and you click the submit, and it will send the form to the IRS email, and then you'll get the required papers after some time. So I was doing that, and however I try, it's not working. And then I was like scratching my head what to do. I called some of the devotees, and one devotee helped. And then he also could not send it. And then he was going to the website and he was reading the instructions. And then he said, Prabhu, we did one mistake. What is that? Even while filling this form, you have to fill it in the same software as you intend to send. So we were filling this form on a different PDF reader and opening it in another PDF reader, Acrobat reader, in order to send it. But we have to fill it also in the same Acrobat reader. And then when we did that, it actually we were able to send that form. So why I'm saying this is because if you don't follow the instructions properly, then you get stuck. Similarly, here Prabhupada says, after creation of the material world, the Lord gave the Vedic wisdom advising how to live and get rid of the material entanglement. The instructions are given, but if we don't follow the instruction, we will remain entangled. We cannot get out of this material world. The manual is given, the instruction set is given by the Lord when this creation also is happened. That instruction set is the Vedic wisdom. So that is the Vedic wisdom. And that instruction set has first karma kanda. First, if you are involved, if you are interested in sense gratification, do the karma kanda. And then when it is finished, then go to this Upanishads. The chance for spiritual realization is offered in the form of Upanishads, which are the higher part of the Vedas. The Upanishads are the cream of the Vedas. So it is said that there are 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda. But Mahabharata is considered the 5th Veda. So just like these 4 Vedas have Upanishads, which are the cream of these 4 Vedas, the 5th Veda, Mahabharata, also has the Upanishad, which is the Gita Upanishad, which is Bhagavad Gita. So when you come from this Karma Kanda to the Upanishads level, particularly the Gita Upanishad, these Upanishads mark the beginning of transcendental life. So that's what Krishna is advising Arjuna. Arjuna, don't get stuck on the sense gratificatory level. Follow the manual which is mentioned in the Upanishads. And for us, what is the Upanishad we follow? We follow Gita Upanishad or Bhagavad Gita. So anybody who follows Bhagavad Gita is satisfying this instruction of Krishna, which is Nishtraigunyo Bhavarjuna. You rise from these three gunas. And we also have, of course, Prabhupada gave us Isopanishad, one of the important Upanishads of the Vedic literature. We have that as well. So one who follows these two books, Isopanishad and Bhagavad Gita as it is, they mark the beginning of that marks the beginning of their transcendental life. Now we covered these two lines, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishtraigunya Bhavarjuna. In this, during this process, while going towards this Nishtraigunya, Krishna says next two lines, Nidvandvo Nitya Sattvastho Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. So first we have to become Nidvandvaha. And for that Prabhupada explains, as long as material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities such as happiness and distress, or cold and warmth, and by tolerating such dualities, become free from anxieties regarding gain and loss. Niryoga Kshema. Because if you are trying to aspire to live a life based on Bhagavad Gita, which is Niryoga Kshema, depending on Krishna. Niryoga Kshema means when it is said, don't worry about your Yoga Kshema, your material welfare, your material aspects. It only means depend on Krishna for those things. Don't depend on your own material insufficient means. Usually we depend on what? Deha patya kalatradishu atma sainyeshu asatsvapi. We depend on the strength of our body by maintaining it nicely, by going to gym, by eating good things, healthy food, or we have a good spouse. We depend on the spouse for bailing us out in times of need, or our children when we grow old, or the social security in terms of the government benefits, or our relatives. So we depend on all of this, or the retirement pension income. So we plan based on all of this. Our yoga kshema is planned based on all of this. But Krishna is saying niryoga kshema means you depend on me. So that requires a lot of faith and surrender. Oh, can Krishna really provide what I want? We should be rest assured that Krishna is providing for every living entity. An elephant requires hundreds of pounds of food every single meal it eats. And Krishna is providing that. An ant, Krishna is providing. An insect, a microbe, Krishna is providing. A tiger, Krishna is providing. Birds, beasts, everybody Krishna is providing. So a surrendered soul Krishna does not provide. So one should have that Shraddha. Shraddha Shabde Vishwas ko hai Sudrudha Nischay. Krishne Bhakti kaile Sarva Karma Krita hoy. So Niryoga Kshema means not that you live life without worrying about anything, but you depend on Krishna. So the words Prabhupada uses very nicely. This transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the good will of Krishna. So we have to be dependent on the good will of Krishna. Krishna's will is goodwill. Even if somebody has to suffer, even if a devotee apparently is suffering, we should consider that that is goodwill of Krishna. Like recently, a horrible incident has happened in India. We all know, in Bengal, in that hospital. So I was talking to somebody, going to invite them for Janmashtami, and this person is not a devotee but is a pious soul, and he was asking me question. I mean, when things like this happen, this woman was screaming for help, and nobody was coming to help, and she was attacked so wildly, and horrible things have happened. And why God did not protect her? I cannot have faith in God because of this kind of instances. Why should we worship God? So God does not exist. So usually when people say there is so much of suffering in the world and therefore God does not exist, because God, if existed, why would there be suffering? That innocent girl, she didn't do anything to deserve it. Why is there so much suffering? So I always tell this simple story when such argument comes up. Let's say this person, he went to this barber. This person has a beard, and he went to the barber, and the barber was shaving the beard. The barber happens to be an atheist, and this person who having the beard is a devotee. And so this barber is, while shaving, he's exclaiming, God doesn't exist. Because if he existed, there wouldn't be so much of suffering in this world. You see, so many people are dying of hunger. So much of calamities are happening. So much of injustice is happening. So much of violence is happening. So if God existed, he wouldn't allow all of this. Therefore, God doesn't exist. So this man got shaved and he remained silent. And so he went outside the shop and he was raising his arms and he was shouting, "Barbers don't exist. Barbers don't exist." And so this barber, he came out running, who was inside. And then he started to say, "What do you mean barbers don't exist? I was the one who shaved you. Don't you see? You're clean shaven now." But then this man, he started to show all the people walking in front. "See this man, he has such a big beard. See this man, he has such a big hair. See this man, he has another beard. So if barbers exist, they wouldn't be having beards and long hairs." And then the barber said, "What do I do if they don't come to me? I cannot shave their head. I cannot shave their beard." And he said, "Exactly. If you don't willfully, voluntarily go to God, who is there with open arms, welcoming you, if you want to live on your own, you already came to this world rebelling against God's supremacy, wanting to be separate from God, nothing to do anything with God. And even if God comes and tells, I'm ready, open for you, please come to my shelter, I'll protect you." But we don't take the shelter of the Lord. So how can Lord take care of you? If you willfully go against God's wishes and don't follow. So then the next question comes, okay, then does it mean that those who surrender to God, no suffering will happen to them? Yes, you're saying, yes, just like this man goes to barber, he gets shaved. You go to God, all your problems are addressed. Is it guarantee that no problem ever comes to you? No suffering ever comes to you if you go to God? The answer is that there is another small story I tell usually on that regard. Let's say you are walking on a road, a busy road. Let's say a car is coming faster behind you, a drunk driver. He doesn't know where he is driving, how he is driving, and he's about to hit you. calamity, and it's going to be death. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, somebody comes and pushes you from that path, and there is a valley next to the road, and you fall into the valley, getting bruised and even fractured. And then you are immediately taken to the hospital, and they treat you, and you survived death, but you are left with a broken hand and some bruises. But this man who got injured, he becomes very grateful to this man who pushed him, even though because of that push he got injured. He suffered the injury, he suffered the fracture. But in front of death, this is nothing, isn't it? Similarly, we have come to this world defying the order, defying the obedience of the Lord. And we placed ourselves in the dangerous material world. This material world is a dangerous place. Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. It's like walking on a minefield or walking on a freeway where full of cars are flying here and there, left and right. And death is inevitable. Suffering is inevitable. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. And when one surrenders to Krishna, when one takes shelter of Krishna and engages in his causeless devotional service, Krishna always protects that person, and sometimes that protection might seem like suffering, that bruises, that fracture that might happen for this person. That should not be taken as suffering, that is, should be taken as relief. If God was not to intervene, I would have suffered even more in my life. That's how one should take. Tattenukampam susamikshamaano bhunjana evatmakrutam vipakam hridvagvapurбhirvidadhan namaste jivetayo muktipade sadaya bhak. So it is said that one who has surrendered to Krishna and who earnestly waits for Krishna's mercy while suffering or undergoing all kinds of life's events, tribulations, so called tribulations or sufferings, whatever life throws at us, taking it as mercy of the Lord, who has minimized it out of his causeless mercy, that person becomes rightful, he has the rightful claim of liberation. Liberation becomes his birthright. Sadayabhak. Dayabhak means the son gets the property of the father. It is inheritance. Nobody has to even explicitly tell him or anything. Automatically he gets the inheritance. So liberation or going back to Godhead becomes our rightful claim when we live a life depending on the Lord and accepting what the Lord does to us as good for us. So, why I am saying this is because Prabhupada says we have to depend on the good will of the Lord. Whatever is the Lord's will is good for us. If we depend on our own strength, it is asatsu, dehapatyakalatradishu, atmasainyeshu, asatsu api. It is bound to fail. Tesham pramatto nidhanam pashyannapi na pashyati. But still, we continue to depend on our own strengths. We continue to cherish material life, which is dukkhalayam ashashvatam, placing ourselves in this dangerous material world. But Krishna is saying, Niryoga Kshema, give up all of that and depend on me. And in that process, you may have to face these dualities. Sometimes suffering, sometimes happiness. Niryoga Kshema, Nirdvando. So Krishna is saying, Nirdvando, you have to become Nirdvandva, freed from the duality. So, in one of the purports, Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this dependency of the Lord is best done in association of devotees. So Prabhupada writes very strongly, A Vaishnava should be satisfied in any condition. Not that, oh, I must have these things, one, two, three, four, five, only then I'll be satisfied. Otherwise, I'm going away from temple or going away from association of devotees. No, that is not Vaishnava qualification. So Prabhupada says, you must live with the devotees even if you are not satisfied. Any condition you should be satisfied. Because as soon as you leave the company, you become again rogues, again demons. At least you will be saved if you keep the company of the devotees. Satam prasangan mama virya samvidaha. If you give up the company, then you again become rogues and demons. Therefore, you must be satisfied in whatever condition. Whatever Krishna has given, that's all right. Satisfied. Surrendered to Krishna. And that satisfaction can be achieved only when one is fully surrendered to Krishna. If I have surrendered to Krishna, Krishna has taken my charge. Krishna says, Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. Then why shall I bother myself thinking I am suffering? It is also Krishna's grace. We should take it like that. Even in my own consideration, I am in a position which is apparently suffering. We must accept as Krishna's grace. All right, I have surrendered to Krishna. If Krishna is giving me suffering, that's all right. That is surrender. Oh, I have surrendered to Krishna and now Krishna is giving me suffering. Oh, leave Krishna consciousness. That is not surrender. Surrender means in any condition you will remain surrendered. So that is what is called depending on the Lord. So Prabhupada, in one of the conversations on this verse, a devotee was asking this shloka. Prabhupada, this text 45 or second chapter says like this. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtraigunya Bhavarjuna Nidvando. So as soon as Prabhupada heard that, yes, as soon as this world is duality, Nidvandva, Dvandva. Duality means you cannot understand one without understanding the other. Just like there is light, you have no conception of light without conception of darkness. Isn't it? Unless we know darkness, we don't know what is light. Unless we know distress, we don't know what is happiness. This is called duality. Unless you experience bad, you cannot experience good. So we have to rise above this dual world and enter into the absolute world. Then there will be happiness. So usually people seek good life. But good life, it's like a coin. You put the tails and heads and you want the heads. But it also comes with the tails. The coin comes with both heads and tails. So good life also includes bad life. So Krishna says, don't seek good life, but God's life. A devotee of life as a devotee of God. Then it is absolutely good. The so-called suffering is also good, and the so-called happiness is also good for you. So I'll stop here. Anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can pose it in the profile or chat window. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanand.